إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَرْفَعُ بِهَذَا الْكِتَابِ أَقْوَامًا. Certainly through this book, Allah Azza wa Jal will raise nations, وَيَضَعُ بِهِ آخَرِينَ, and He will destroy others.
Ramadan, 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 Ramadan.
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. We continue now with the third hadith عن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن الله تعالى يرفع بهذا الكتاب أقواما ويدع به آخرين. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, ورواه Muslim وابن Majah. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, as is narrated by Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anh. And who is Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anh? Again, one of the most noble people to have ever walked on the face of this earth. In fact, after Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anh, the single most noble person to have walked on the face of the earth after the Anbiya, after the Prophets. He is narrating to us this hadith. He narrates that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَرْفَعُ بِهَذَا الْكِتَابِ أَقْوَامًا. Certainly through this book, Allah Azza wa Jal will raise nations, وَيَضَعُ بِهِ آخَرِينَ, and He will destroy others through this book as well. Subhanallah. There's a lot to reflect on this. First and foremost, Umar radiallahu anh, it's famously narrated from him that when he was entering into the gates of Sham, he had conquered Sham, the Muslims had conquered Sham, and he's entering into the gates of the Levant, into Bayt al-Maqdis. He says to one of the companions who is there to greet him that certainly Allah Azza wa Jal a'azzana Allahu bil Islam. He granted us honor through Islam, and if we seek it through anything else, then certainly Allah Azza wa Jal will humiliate us. We have to remember that we gained honor through Islam. We did not gain honor because of our lineage. We did not gain honor because of our wealth. We did not gain honor because of our beauty. Allah gave us honor through Islam. Allah gave us honor through Islam. And what is the specific aspect of this deen that grants us this honor? Again, it goes back to the book of Allah Azza wa Jal. How much we follow Islam and how much we depart and we drift away from Islam is reflected in how much we actually follow the book of Allah Azza wa Jal, or how much we drift away from it. That is a reflection of our nobility in this earth, on this land, and in the next, in the akhirah, when we are standing in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. So certainly if we take the Quran, if we recite it, if we learn it, if we memorize it, if we act upon it at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. If we act upon the book of Allah Azza wa Jal, then certainly Allah will elevate and He will honor us. Whereas if we drift away and we depart away from the book of Allah Azza wa Jal, we read it and we learn it, but we then don't act upon it and we go astray, then certainly Allah Azza wa Jal will destroy us. And what's very interesting is that the Prophet ﷺ, he says, وَيَضَعُ بِهِ الْآخَرِينَ آخَرِينَ, that he says that certainly it is through the book, through the Quran, that Allah Azza wa Jal will destroy us. How? Because if we learn the Quran, الْقُرْآنُ حُجَّةٌ لَكَ أَوْ عَلَيْكَ. If we learn the Quran, then it becomes a proof for us or a proof against us. The Quran will speak on the day of judgment. The Quran will speak on the day of judgment, and it will be a proof for us if we followed it, or it will be a proof against us if we drifted away from it despite knowing what the Quran teaches us. It's very, very important that we practice what we learn, that we put it into our actions. Otherwise, the Quran will testify against us, and certainly Allah Azza wa Jal, He will use this book as a means of our humiliation, both in this world and especially in the next world. Subhanallah, this is something that we should not take lightly. If Allah has blessed us to be in the month of Ramadan, to be connected to the book of Allah, to listen to it in Taraweeh every single night, then it behooves us, in fact it becomes incumbent upon us, that we start to act upon what we learn. That starts with learning what Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling us, understanding it, but then putting it into practice. And this was what the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they used to do. They would not go beyond 10 ayat, 10 verses, except that they would learn it and they would put it into practice, and then they would go to the next 10. And then they would go to the next 10. So even if it takes us our whole lives to memorize the Quran, if we are putting it into practice slowly and slowly, then the Quran is becoming a proof for us. Allah is honoring us through the book. I pray that Allah Azza wa Jal grants us tawfiq. And I pray that Allah Azza wa Jal allows us to be honored by the book in this life and in the next. Wa sallallahu wa barik ala nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathiran kathiran.
Ramadan, 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 Ramadan.